one, find a partner. It can be a friend, or it can be your mother or your dad. It can be somebody who will always go with you to all these meetings, whatever it is. And they'll just listen. They might even take notes. Actually, a clipboard is very helpful because it makes you look like you're in charge. And then, if you pick up the phone, and you know how you get one person after another, like, when you finally find a real person, put that person's name down, and then keep a record of when you call and all these different things, the comments that they make, because after you've gone through this process, these calls that you make, you forget. You forget who you talked to, what they said, what the order was that you made all those calls. So just keep a running log of the person, the name of the person you called, and then what did they say, what do you have to do next, and I think you'll find that then when you have these meetings, you can say, on such and such a day, I called and I talked to so-and-so, and this is what she said. And then all of a sudden, the ball is in your court, and it's your game. So I think just those few technical little things that you can do to help yourself, get what you need.
That's great advice. I think that the idea that you're going to carry a clipboard so you look as important as everybody else in the room, that you keep yourself organized by keeping detailed notes, those are all good pieces of advice for people who need to navigate. And they have a partner, that was the other thing. Yeah, bring somebody along with you.
Well, earlier when the lady was talking about the dual disabilities, physical and mental health, it depends which disability is primary. That's the entity that should be providing the service. It's a very simple answer.
Yeah, so generally what an NCO is going to do is they're going to look to see what is the primary disability, and if it's a mental health disability, it's supposed to be addressed by the county, or the county mental health system. Sometimes those things all kind of intermix. Like if there's a physical disability, that could be complicated by other things, and we all know that there are people with developmental disabilities with mental health needs, so it all gets kind of jumbled up after time.
Yeah, well over 30% of the people in family care have mental health disabilities as well.
Right. Everybody hear that? About 30% of people in family care have mental health issues.
But, tonight I think we've been talking about a top-down approach. You're trying to level the playing field and try us to push up. And I appreciate that, but NCOs have limited amounts of funding. Where does the money come from? Does not the DHS have primary responsibility to see that adequate funding is provided?
That's a great question.
All aren't in the same predicament?
Yeah. I mean, you're pointing it right back to who's responsible for funding the NCOs in the first place. That's kind of what I was trying to say. That you have to look at how the money comes into the system to really fix the system.
Exactly.
At this point in time, it's kind of a complicated way that they figure out how much money each of the NCOs should get. They base it on the long-term care functional screen and its relationship to costs that they've identified. So they did what's essentially a correlation study, like the actuarial firms will do. Is that the best way to do it? Well, depends on what factors they chose. Are they the best factors? Do they relate to people with developmental disabilities? Is it an adequate assessment to begin with? We heard stories in a couple of forums about the long-term care functional screens being done inappropriately. Not consulting people who know that individual, for example, and taking the answers from a person with intellectual disability as gospel instead of checking with the family or checking with the providers as to whether or not those are accurate. So it's the old thing, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't get information right in the first place, that makes it invalid. But in addition, they're not looking at some of the right things for these folks that we all care about. So those are things that we want to target for change.
Yeah, and the thing we're not certain about right now in this situation is, are the capitation rates just off somehow? And are they off in a lot of MCOs, a couple of MCOs? And that goes back to your question, top down. If a particular MCO just isn't getting enough funding, then it's probably not going to work